Imagine you want a spear. You've got fish. Your family caught more than you can eat this week. Somewhere in your camp, someone's got a good flint blade. But they don't want fish. They want firewood. And you don't have firewood to spare. So now what? No banks, no coins, no app to send value instead. And yet, for over 95,000 years, humans got exactly what they needed from each other. The trade just didn't work the way you'd think. This is the real story of how ancient humans traded, long before the first coin was ever struck. And it starts with a widely repeated idea that turns out to be almost completely wrong. Here's the story most of us were taught. Before money, humans bartered. You had fish, I had firewood, we traded, done. Simple, direct, one for one. Except there's a problem baked right into that story, and economists actually have a name for it: the double coincidence of wants. For a barter trade to work, I need something you want at the exact moment you have something I want. Not next week, not I'll have wood tomorrow. Right now, both sides in sync. Think about how often that actually lines up. You need medicine. The only healer in camp needs meat. You don't have meat today. You have baskets. The healer doesn't want baskets. Does your kid just not get treated? Anthropologists spent decades assuming early humans just muscled through this problem constantly, trading item for item, one clumsy exchange at a time. But when researchers actually went looking for a society that ran primarily on stranger-to-stranger barter as its main economic system, they came back mostly empty-handed. It doesn't show up in the historical or anthropological record the way economics textbooks imply it should. So what were people actually doing? The answer is stranger than direct trade, and honestly, more human.
In small tribal groups, people weren't making even trades at all. They were keeping track of each other, not with ledgers or numbers, but with memory, with reputation, with an understanding that debts didn't need to be settled on the spot, because you were going to see this person again tomorrow, and the day after that, for the rest of your life. Barter, it turns out, mostly shows up later, between strangers who don't trust each other and don't expect to meet again. Inside a tribe, something completely different was running the show. Picture a group of 30 people. Everyone knows everyone. You've grown up watching each other hunt, cook, raise children, get sick, recover. In a group that small, you don't need instant repayment for anything, because the relationship itself is the security. If I give you half my kill today, I'm not expecting fish back this afternoon. I'm expecting that when I'm injured next month and can't hunt, you'll bring me something. Nobody writes this down. Nobody needs to. The debt lives in memory and in reputation. And reputation was arguably the first form of currency humans ever built. Being known as generous, reliable, someone who shares, that mattered enormously. It wasn't just a nice personality trait. It functioned almost like a credit score, except the currency wasn't numbers. It was trust. Someone with a reputation for stinginess could find themselves quietly cut off when they needed help most. Someone known for generosity had an entire tribe willing to catch them when they fell.
This wasn't unique to any one region. Anthropologists studying small-scale societies across completely different parts of the world, from foraging groups in the Kalahari to island communities in the Pacific, kept finding the same underlying pattern. Not barter, reciprocity. One of the more striking examples comes from the Trobriand Islands, off the coast of Papua New Guinea. For generations, communities there took part in an enormous, ongoing ceremonial exchange called the Kula Ring. Shell necklaces traveled one direction around a loop of islands. Shell armbands traveled the opposite direction. None of these objects were particularly useful. You couldn't eat them, farm with them, or build anything from them. Their entire value came from the relationships they represented and the status of having received them from a respected trading partner. People would paddle canoes across dangerous open water,
sometimes for days, purely to maintain these exchange relationships. It wasn't about the shells. It was about the bond the exchange created and the safety net that bond guaranteed. You see a version of the same instinct in gift-giving ceremonies among indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest, where wealth was displayed and redistributed through elaborate ceremonial giving. The message underneath all of it was consistent. Generosity builds obligation. Obligation builds community. And community is what actually keeps you alive when the hunt fails or the winter is long.
This worked beautifully at the scale of a tribe. 30 people, maybe 100. Everyone's reputation was visible to everyone else. But humans didn't stay in groups of 30 forever. Something happens once a settlement grows from 100 people to 1,000. You stop knowing everyone. You can't track every favor, every debt, every act of generosity in your head anymore, because you're no longer trading with people you'll see every single day for the rest of your life. Memory-based trust starts to break down exactly when you need trade the most, with strangers. So humans needed something new, not a relationship, an object, something physical that could represent value on the spot, that both sides could agree meant something, even if they'd never met before and never would again. This is where commodity money enters the picture, and it shows up independently in wildly different parts of the world, in ways that are almost eerily similar. Cowrie shells are probably the best example. These small, glossy shells from the Indian Ocean ended up circulating as currency across huge stretches of Africa, South Asia, and the Pacific, in some regions for well over 1,000 years. Why shells? They were durable. They didn't spoil. They were hard to fake and difficult to just gather in unlimited amounts, since most people lived nowhere near the coastlines where they came from. Scarcity, portability, durability. That combination made them work almost like coins, long before actual coins existed. Salt tells a similar story. In parts of the ancient world, salt wasn't just a seasoning. It was essential for preserving meat and survival itself, and in some regions, hard to come by. It became valuable enough that Roman soldiers were reportedly paid partly in salt rations, which, according to popular etymology, is where we may get the word salary. Historians still debate the exact details of that origin story, but the underlying point holds either way. Salt functioned as a real form of payment across parts of the ancient Mediterranean and Africa. Then there's cattle. In many pastoral societies, wealth wasn't counted in coins. It was counted in herd size. This idea runs so deep in language that our modern word capital traces back to the Latin word for head, as in head of cattle. The word pecuniary, meaning related to money, comes from the Latin pecus, cattle. Even chattel, an old term for property, shares that same root. Somewhere underneath modern finance vocabulary, there are literally cows. And in some of the earliest cities in Mesopotamia, grain and silver were used as standard units of value long before coins existed. Temple economies tracked debts and prices in fixed weights of barley or silver, allowing trade between people who had never met and would likely never meet again. Different materials, different continents, same underlying solution. When trust can't scale with memory anymore, humans reach for something physical, scarce, and agreed upon to carry that trust instead. But commodity money didn't just solve trade between neighbors in the same town. It made something even bigger possible. Here's where the story gets genuinely strange. Long before writing, before cities, before anything resembling a formal economy, humans were moving goods hundreds of miles away, between groups who didn't speak the same language and had no shared culture at all. Take obsidian, a black volcanic glass, sharp enough to make incredibly precise cutting tools. Archaeologists have traced obsidian tools found at Neolithic sites in Anatolia, in what's now Turkey, back to specific volcanic sources located hundreds of miles away. That material didn't fly there. It moved hand to hand, group to group, across an unimaginable relay of trading relationships,
likely over generations. In Europe, there was something called the Amber Road, an ancient network moving fossilized tree resin from the Baltic coastline all the way down to the Mediterranean, passing through the hands of dozens of different communities along the way. No single trader made that entire journey. The value moved further than any one person ever traveled. And then there's one of the strangest trading practices in the historical record: silent trade. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus described a practice among Carthaginian traders along the West African coast. They would arrive by ship, lay out goods on the beach, then retreat and light a signal fire from a distance. Local traders would come, examine the goods, leave what they believed was a fair amount of gold beside them, and withdraw. The Carthaginians would return, and if satisfied, take the gold and leave. If not, they'd simply wait without touching anything until more gold was added. No words, no shared language, no face-to-face negotiation at all. Just an agreed-upon ritual of offer, evaluate, and counteroffer, played out entirely through physical distance and mutual restraint. Two completely different cultures, who may never have understood a single word the other spoke, managing to build enough trust to trade valuable goods without ever really meeting. That's the part that's easy to miss in all of this. Trade before money wasn't a workaround humans were stuck using until something better came along.
It was an entire sophisticated social technology built on memory, reputation, ritual, and eventually physical objects that could carry trust across distance and time. Money didn't invent any of that. It just made it easier to scale. Here's the thing about all of this that hits closest to home. We never actually left that older system behind. We just layered money on top of it. Think about how you actually handle small transactions with people you know. You don't split a coffee run to the cent. You don't invoice a friend for helping you move. You cover a round of drinks because you know they'll get the next one. None of that runs through a cash register in your head. It runs on the exact same social ledger our ancestors were using tens of thousands of years ago. Memory, reputation, the quiet expectation that it evens out eventually. Money solved a real problem: trading with strangers, at scale, across distances trust alone couldn't cover. But the moment you're dealing with people you actually know, we still default to something older and more human than currency. We default to trust. So the next time you cover a friend's lunch and just say, "You'll get me next time," you're not doing something modern and casual. You're running a system that's been keeping humans fed, housed, and alive for longer than money has existed at all. If you want more of these deep dives into how ancient humans actually built the systems we still rely on today, subscribe. There's a lot more of this story left to tell. Wait for the next video, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Check out more at Fenwick